They say the beeping of hospital machines is supposed to be reassuring. To me, it sounded like a countdown.
Not to my surgery.
Not to pain. To the moment I finally stopped caring. The nurse's shoes squeaked against the linoleum as she pushed my bed toward the double doors. My gown clung to my skin. The air felt sharp, antiseptic. My phone buzzed beside my leg, lighting up like a carnival in the dark. 27 missed calls. From Mom. The woman who knew I was here. The woman who'd chosen cake and champagne over the daughter she'd raised. The last text she'd sent was only 3 words. We need to talk. Not are you okay? Not we're on our way. The screen dimmed, reflecting my pale face back at me. I wasn't crying, not yet. I was too numb. But numbness, I've learned, is just grief waiting for an opening. Through the small window in the hors d'oeuvres, I could see a sliver of bright surgical light. My pulse quickened. This was real. I was going under, not knowing if anyone would be there when I woke up. And the truth? That was the part that hurt less than it should have. Because part of me, the quiet, dangerous part, was already plotting what would come after. The nurse glanced down at me. "You've got someone waiting outside?" she asked, casual. I smiled. No one worth mentioning. The doors swung open. Cold air poured in, metallic and biting. The surgeon's masked face came into view. I closed my eyes, not to rest, but to see the last image burned into my mind. My sister's grinning face on Instagram, framed by birthday balloons. My mother's hand in the shot, holding a glass of wine. If silence is a weapon, mine was about to be sharpened. I let the anesthesia creep in. Not the surrender of sleep, the gathering of strength. They'd remember this absence. They'd feel it like a shadow in every family photo. Because when I woke, I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to explain. I wasn't going to forgive. Some debts are too deep for words. And mine? It was going to be collected in full in the quietest, most public way possible. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the light. Thin morning sun filtered through the blinds, striping the white wall in gold and shadow. The second thing I noticed was the silence. No flowers. No cards. No family. A nurse bustled in, cheerful in that brisk, professional way. "How's our fighter this morning?" she asked, checking my chart. I tried to answer, but my throat was dry. She poured water into a cup, handed it to me, then glanced toward the empty chair in the corner. "Your ride's coming soon?" I took a sip, my voice low. "No one's coming." Her eyes softened in a way I hated, pity like a wet cloth draped over my dignity. "Well, we'll make sure you get home safe."
Home.
The word sat wrong in my chest. Home wasn't where I lived. It was the place they could leave me behind without a second thought. My phone lay on the tray beside the bed. 53 unread messages now. The missed calls had doubled. The first was from Mom, time-stamped hours before surgery ended. "We need to talk about the insurance money." Not "how was it?" Not "I love you." The rest of the messages blurred together. Demands, justifications, fragments of drama from the dinner I'd missed. The only one from my sister read, "You could have rescheduled." I set the phone face down. A tech arrived with a wheelchair. As he wheeled me toward the discharge desk, I caught my reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. I looked like someone mid-recovery, pale, tired, but the set of my jaw told a different story. On the curb, I waited for the hospital shuttle, watching as families pulled up in minivans, relatives spilling out with blankets, hugs, and promises of soup at home. When my ride came, it wasn't to take me to them. It was to take me to my apartment, quiet, small, and, most importantly, mine. Inside, I sank onto the couch, the clock ticking in the stillness. My phone buzzed again, a video call from Mom. I let it ring out. A second later, a text. "Your uncle's asking about you. Should I tell him you're fine?" For a moment, I almost typed back. Then I realized, this was their game. Pretend concern for the benefit of others, while the truth stayed locked in our family's private vault of betrayals. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop. There were ways to make absence loud. Ways to let the world see what they were, without saying a word that could be twisted. By the time the sun dipped low that day, the first step was already in motion. They'd ignored me in my most vulnerable moment. Soon, the world would see exactly how it felt. The first step was simple. I went quiet. Not just ignoring calls, that was too common, too easy to dismiss. I became strategically absent. Social media went dark. No posts, no likes, no stories. In group chats, my name sat there, gray and unread, a ghost in the corner. I stopped showing up to family dinners, birthdays, just because, cookouts. No explanations, no excuses. And yet, I was watching. It's strange how people reveal themselves when they think you're gone. My sister posted photo after photo from her birthday dinner, the one they'd all attended while I was being wheeled into surgery. The captions were glowing, all about family love. Mom commented on every single one with heart emojis, like nothing had happened. That's when I knew. It wasn't enough to just disappear. I had to make the truth visible. I started with Uncle Ray. He'd always been the one relative who called on my birthday without fail. I sent him one message. "Did Mom tell you I had surgery?" His reply came minutes later. "No, what surgery? When? Are you okay?" The ripple began. From there, I reached out to a cousin in Ohio, an aunt in Texas. Each time, the reaction was the same: shock, confusion, a hint of anger on my behalf. And I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse. I just stated the facts. No, they didn't visit. Yes, they knew. No, they never called until after it was over. It was the truth, stripped bare. And the truth is harder to refute than any accusation. A week later, Mom called again, not to apologize, but to scold. "You've been telling people things that make us look bad." I almost laughed. "I've been telling the truth." Her voice sharpened. "You're making a scene?" "No, Mom," I said quietly. "You made the scene. I'm just letting people watch the replay." She hung up. The next day, my sister texted, "Do you have to make this public? It's family business." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "You made it public the moment you posted smiling birthday pics while I was in a hospital bed." Silence followed. The guilt wasn't there, not anymore. I wasn't that kid desperate for their approval.
I was someone else now.
Someone who understood that silence could be sharper than shouting, and absence could be heavier than presence. The thing about family reputations? They're like porcelain. Fine until a single crack forms. And I had no intention of gluing theirs back together. By the end of that month, the whispers had started. The concerned relatives were calling them instead of me. And every time they tried to patch the story, they only made the crack bigger. Exactly as planned. The escalation didn't start with a bang. It started with a post. One photo. Not of me, not of them, but of a hospital wristband lying across my kitchen counter, next to a cup of untouched tea. Caption: "Recovery is easier when you do it alone." Thankfully, I've had practice. No tags. No names. No accusations. But in a family where everything is about image, subtlety is more dangerous than direct attack. Within hours, the comments rolled in. Old friends, coworkers, distant relatives, all asking the same thing: what happened? And the more I stayed vague, the more the speculation grew. By the next day, I started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. One was my aunt from New Jersey. We'd spoken maybe twice in 5 years. She didn't bother with small talk. "I just talked to your mom. She says you're exaggerating. You want to tell me what really happened?" So I told her dates, times, details. No embellishment, no venom. She went silent for a long moment before saying quietly, "I'll call you back." Hours later, Mom's name lit up my phone. I didn't answer. Instead, I posted again. This time, a photo of the untouched "Get well soon" card a coworker had left on my desk at the office, with a caption: "Sometimes, the people you work with show up more than the people you share blood with." The comments doubled. And now, they weren't asking, they were reacting.
Shock.
Sympathy. Disbelief. That's when the messages from Mom shifted tone. From, "Stop making us look bad," to, "You're twisting the narrative," to, "You're hurting the family." But the thing about hurt? It doesn't start with the truth being told. It starts with the act that made the truth ugly to begin with. 3 weeks in, I got a message from an old family friend, Mrs. Alvarez. She'd known me since I was 5. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she wrote. "I didn't know they left you there. I'll be having a word with your mother." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just whispers anymore. It was a slow, controlled burn spreading through every branch of our social circle. By the time my sister's engagement party rolled around, people were already looking at them differently. I didn't go, but the photos told me enough. Stiff smiles, fewer guests than usual, and comments under her posts that weren't the usual gushing praise. Reputation isn't destroyed in a single blow. It crumbles grain by grain until there's nothing left to hold. And I was just getting started. The sharper turn came with an invitation, one they didn't know I received. A local community group I'd volunteered with for years was hosting a charity gala. Normally, Mom would be front and center, shaking hands and pretending her life was spotless. This year, she wasn't even on the guest list. I was. When I arrived, I made sure to look like I'd never seen a sick day in my life. Black dress, gold earrings, hair pinned back. And I didn't arrive alone. I walked in with Mrs. Alvarez on one arm and Uncle Ray on the other. The same people who'd been quietly calling her, asking why she'd abandoned her daughter in a hospital bed. It was a visual she couldn't control. Word spread quickly. "I thought you were close with your mom," someone said in a hushed tone. "We used to be," I replied simply. Then I excused myself before they could ask more. Let them fill in the blanks. 2 days later, the local paper ran a photo from the event. Me, front row at the auction table, laughing at something Mrs. Alvarez said. My mother's absence was noticeable. The text from Mom came less than an hour after the paper hit mailboxes. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent an email to the gala's organizers, thanking them for the wonderful evening and offering a $500 donation in honor of the unsung heroes who stand by you when others won't. They posted the thank you on their Facebook page, tagging me. By now, the cousins, the neighbors, the church ladies, they'd all started choosing sides. And silence was never louder than when someone you once gossiped with stops acknowledging you in public. The breaking point came in the form of a voicemail from my sister. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. "Mom's really upset. You've made this a whole thing. You should apologize before it gets worse." I played it twice, then deleted it. Apologize? For surviving alone? For speaking truth without raising my voice?
No.
Instead, I sent my sister a single photo, the hospital wristband from months ago, and a one-line text. This is where it got worse. By the time summer ended, I'd been invited to 2 more community events they weren't included in, both hosted by people they once considered allies. Their smiles in public had tightened into brittle lines. The beauty of a slow, public unraveling is that you never have to raise your hand to push. You just remove your support and gravity does the rest. And the fall had only just begun. Symbolic revenge isn't loud. It's deliberate. And mine began with an auction paddle. The fall charity auction was the kind of event my mother used to live for. Wine glasses clinking, polite applause after every bid. I hadn't been in years. But this time, I made sure I was seated at the center table, surrounded by people she once called our circle. Halfway through the night, the MC announced the next item, a weekend stay at the lakeside cabin my parents used to rent every summer. The place where my mother would parade us in matching outfits for photo ops, then spend the rest of the trip reminding me how I didn't quite fit the image. I raised my paddle without hesitation. The bidding went back and forth, 200, 300, 4. At 500, the other bidder dropped out.
Sold.
A few claps, a few smiles, and one curious look from the mayor's wife. "I thought your family still rented that place?" she asked softly. "Not anymore," I said. "Guess things change." That weekend, I went to the cabin alone. I took photos, sunlight on the water, steam curling from my coffee cup, my bare feet on the dock. Each one captioned simply, "Some traditions are better without the ones who ruin them." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't have to. By Monday, I'd received 3 texts from my sister and one from Mom. "You're being cruel. You know this is hurting us. Take those posts down." I left them on read. What they didn't know was that the cabin wasn't the only auction I'd won that night. Another item, less flashy, but far more symbolic, a handcrafted quilt made by the women's shelter downtown. The same shelter I'd donated to quietly for years, long before they decided I owed them my earnings. 2 weeks later, I attended the shelter's winter fundraiser and donated the quilt back, in my family's name. The director thanked the Hale family publicly from the stage.
People clapped.
My parents weren't there to collect it. That photo, me standing under the banner with the quilt, made it into the local paper. Again. By now, I didn't have to speak for people to understand. The pattern was clear. I was living well, connected, respected. They were absent. It's a strange thing, watching people who once claimed ownership over you lose their grip. They keep reaching, but there's nothing left to hold. And I was about to take away the last thread tying me to them. The final thread wasn't money. It wasn't property. It was the last name we all shared. It had been mine since birth, their stamp on every form, every school trophy, every bill I paid. For years, I thought it was unshakable, part of me. But sitting in the county clerk's office that gray Tuesday morning, pen in hand, I realized it wasn't. It was just ink on paper. The woman behind the glass looked up from my form. Reason for the change? I smiled. Personal. 2 weeks later, my new driver's license arrived. No more Hale. No more shadow of their ownership. I'd chosen my grandmother's maiden name, strong, simple, mine. The first time I saw it in print, I felt the weight slide off my chest. I didn't announce it. I let them find out the way they found out everything now, secondhand. It happened at the bank. I was finalizing paperwork for my new condo downtown when the loan officer, a mutual acquaintance of my mother's, mentioned it casually over lunch with her. She must have remarried. My mother guessed. My sister corrected her. She didn't. She just changed it. They called that night. 21 missed calls by morning. The voicemail swung between guilt and fury. After everything we've done, you'd erase us like this? This is humiliating. You're making a scene. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the shelter a fresh donation under my new name, a name they'd never touch, never claim, never twist. The receipt went up on the shelter's social media page with a photo of me and the director. The caption read, "Our community is stronger when we stand by each other." Within a day, it had more likes than any post they'd made all year. People started asking questions. Not to me. I was untouchable now, but to them. Why weren't they in my life? Why hadn't they been there at the hospital? At the auction? At the shelter fundraisers? And I knew the truth was cornering them in a way I never could. That's the thing about quiet revenge. It doesn't shout. It waits. It lets time and proof stack until the picture paints itself. And when it does, you don't have to lift a brush. All I had to do was sign my name. My new name. One last loose end remained, not for me, but for them. Something that would make sure their version of me, the one they'd controlled for years, could never be revived. That part would happen in public. The invitation arrived in early spring, the city's annual community awards banquet. I'd been nominated for Outstanding Service for my work with the women's shelter. I knew exactly who else would be in the room. My parents never missed this event back when they were still being photographed for the society pages. They'd sit front and center, shaking hands like royalty. This year, I requested my table be at the very front, one row closer than theirs. The night of the banquet, the ballroom glittered with glassware and soft jazz. I wore a deep emerald dress that caught the light with every step. The director of the shelter sat to my left, the mayor to my right. Halfway through dinner, the host took the stage and began the awards. When my name was announced, my new name, there was a brief pause in the room. People glanced at my parents, then back at me. I walked to the stage slowly, deliberately. The applause swelled. Cameras flashed. The host handed me the award and motioned for me to speak. I looked out at the crowd, and directly at my mother. "I stand here tonight," I began, "not because I had everything given to me, but because I learned how to build from nothing. Some of us are lucky enough to be born into support. Others have to find it along the way. I found mine in the most unexpected places, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no one feels they have to go through life alone. The room went still. I smiled, holding the plaque high. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother's jaw tighten. My father stared at his plate. After the ceremony, people came up to congratulate me. A few asked quiet questions about my name change, my work, my story. I didn't answer everything I didn't need to. The silence said enough. The next morning, the city paper ran a front-page photo of me on stage, the award in my hand, captioned, "Marissa Quinn receives Outstanding Service Award." That photo went everywhere online, on social media, in the lobby of the shelter. It wasn't fame I wanted. It was erasure. The last trace of the version of me they'd tried to own was gone, replaced by someone they couldn't reach, couldn't claim, and couldn't rewrite. I didn't send them the article. I knew they saw it. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't care what they thought. That was the real revenge. Not the award, not the name, not the whispers in the room. It was the freedom of knowing I'd already won. "You've always been the family joke," my mother said, laughing as she popped open a bottle of wine I paid for again. The whole table laughed with her. Not cruelly, not loudly, just naturally. Like this was normal. Like it had always been that way. I stood there, holding the receipt in my hand for the third family holiday in a row. $7,240. Catering.
Flights.
Airbnb. Decorations. Matching pajamas. All charged to my card. All taken for granted. My name is Vanessa. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever paid to be humiliated? Paid for the table, the roof, the gifts, only to be told you don't belong at your own party? Because I did. For years. And this time, I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I didn't even finish dinner. I just snapped. It was Christmas Eve. We were at a rented beach villa. Rented meaning I paid the full deposit, the cleaning fee, and the chef everyone forgot to tip. I'd flown in from Seattle after closing the biggest deal of my career, real estate portfolio expansion. Multi-million-dollar contract. I hadn't even unpacked when Mom called and said, "We're doing Florida this year. You can afford it, right? Be a good sport." And I was. I booked it all. Quietly. No complaints. I even arranged for a snow machine for the kids, just to make it magical. And what did I get? Laughter when I asked someone to pass the potatoes. Silence when I mentioned my promotion. And then that comment. "You've always been the family joke, Nessa. I mean, we love you, but come on, you're just the one with the money." The worst part? Even my little brother chuckled. The one I loaned $12,000 to last year, so his business wouldn't collapse. He lifted his glass like it was funny. It wasn't funny. It was final. I stood up, picked up my purse, and said one line. "Then stay out of my life." My mom blinked.
What?
"You heard me. I funded this trip. And the last 3. I've paid for birthdays, anniversaries, down payments, hospital bills, everything. And in return, I get to be your joke?" No one answered. So I left. I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. I didn't ask for a thank you. The next morning, I was already back in Seattle. Back in my apartment. Back in my silence. But not for long. Because what they didn't know, I hadn't just signed a deal before flying to Florida. I had bought a mansion.
Cash.
20,000 square feet of marble floors, spiral staircases, and floor-to-ceiling windows that kissed the city's skyline. A private gallery. A 2-story library. 5-car garage. And not a single soul in my family knew. Because for once, I wanted something that was mine. Untouched. Unused. Not another thing they'd asked to borrow or crash inside for a week, just to recharge.
No.
This was my fortress. And when they found out, they would learn what it felt like to look at something they didn't get to enter. Not because I was cruel, but because I was done paying for access to my own dignity. The messages started pouring in 2 days later. "We heard you left. Is everything okay? Mom says you're being dramatic. Hey, Nessa, was that your name I saw on the deed for the Thornton estate?
Wait.
Did you buy that mansion?" I didn't reply. I was already moving in. And this time, the only key was in my pocket. I didn't block them. That would have been too easy. I wanted them to watch, to sit with the echo of everything they never appreciated. So I posted a single photo. Just one. A quiet shot of the marble staircase, sunlight flooding through the windows like liquid gold. No caption. No location tag. Just the feeling. You're not welcome here. Within 15 minutes, my cousin Dree texted, "Wait, is this your house?" I let it sit unread. Within an hour, my brother sent, "Yo, that's the Thornton mansion, right? You moved in already?" My mom's message came last. "Vanessa, we need to talk. This is all a bit much. You don't just walk away from family." But you do. You walk away the minute you realize you're only loved for what you offer, not for who you are. Moving day was poetic. I didn't hire movers. I had all my belongings shipped by white glove concierge service. Silent, professional, no questions asked. I walked through the mansion barefoot that first night. It didn't feel lonely. It felt like breathing in a language no one else had ever let me speak. No passive-aggressive questions about my choices. No borrowed furniture, borrowed time, borrowed money. Just walls that reflected me. 3 days later, my assistant forwarded me a voicemail. From my mother. "You can't seriously be punishing us like this. We've always included you. You were never the joke, we just tease. That's what family does. That's what family does." No acknowledgement of the receipts I carried. The Venmo logs. The joint Christmas fund I filled alone.
No sorry.
Just defense disguised as concern. So I recorded my own message. "Hi, Mom. You don't get to joke about someone who pays for the table you're laughing at. You don't get to ignore my milestones while cashing the checks that made them possible. And you don't get to call me dramatic for stepping back when I was never truly invited to begin with. I bought a mansion. Not to impress you. To finally own a space where love isn't conditional on usefulness. And no, you're not welcome here. This isn't a punishment. It's peace." I didn't send it. I saved it. For me. Amara, my interior designer. Notice the tension. "You're setting boundaries in concrete now," she said, pointing at the tall iron gates we had just programmed with facial recognition access. "That's the idea," I smiled. "If you never saw me when I was right in front of you, then you don't get past the gate now."
She grinned.
Savage.
No.
Not savage.
Sane.
The housewarming invitations were delivered a week later. Not to my family. To everyone else who stood beside me when I was still driving a rusted Corolla, working double shifts, and begging for a little acknowledgement. My college roommate who lent me her textbooks. My mentor who reviewed my first failed pitch deck at midnight. The janitor from my first apartment building who helped me fix my heater during a snowstorm. People who had no obligation, but chose to see me. They came. They toasted. They clinked glasses in my home. And not one of them asked, "How much did this cost?" They just said, "It's perfect. You deserve it." I stood at the balcony that night, glass in hand, watching the city blink beneath me. My phone buzzed again.
Mom.
"Vanessa. I heard from Dree. Everyone's talking about your house. You're making us look bad." There it was. Not, "You must be proud." Not, "We miss you." Not even, "We're sorry." Just appearance panic. I didn't reply. Because behind these gates, only love enters. And guilt gets turned away. 2 weeks passed. No calls from my mother. No apologies. But the family group chat, once silent, began bubbling again. My name, suddenly popping up in screenshots. A blurry photo of my front gate circulating in the cousin circle. A post someone found on a real estate blog. Mysterious buyer snaps up historic Thornton mansion in cash deal. They didn't know I'd used a shell company. But they knew enough. And their questions turned into whispers. Then into envy. And finally into fabricated stories. She must be dating someone rich. She got lucky. Real estate's just a bubble. Honestly, she's always been a bit cold. We were just teasing. Teasing. The way they teased when I forgot to send extra for Mom's spa birthday. Or when I said no to my brother's third car payment. Or when I dared ask for my own key back after they used my apartment like a hotel. But this time, I didn't have to argue, because something better was on the way. A week later, I scheduled a delivery. Not flowers, not a letter, a box, addressed to my mother. Inside, photocopies, labeled, dated, organized. Every invoice from the past 7 years. Christmas flights, 2018, $3,750. Emergency dental for just a loan, $1,200. Birthday trip to Cancun for her, $4,870. My brother's eviction covered, $2,940. Grandma's medical chair, $900. Last-minute catering for their vow renewal, $6,410. At the bottom of the stack, one note, written by me. You called me the family joke. I was the punchline while you passed the bill. You said I made you look bad? I paid for your best-looking moments. Here's the proof. Frame it. No threats. No venom. Just truth. Neat. Factual. Undeniable. 3 days later, the reaction came. Not a call. A visit. I watched from the top-floor camera as my mother stood outside the gate. Alone. No flowers. No smile. Just her.
Pale. Tense.
Uninvited. She buzzed the intercom once. Vanessa. Let's talk. I didn't answer. She waited 10 minutes. Then 20. Then left. That night, I received a text. I got your box. I didn't realize it was that much. But does money erase love?
I stared at it for a long time.
Then typed. Love without respect is just dead in disguise. I hit send. Blocked her number. The next day, my brother tried. Come on, Ness. You really gonna ice out everyone over one dinner? We're blood. I replied with a screenshot. One he sent years ago, where he joked in the cousin group chat. Nessa's got main character syndrome again. Let her pay for it all. She'll feel special. I didn't add commentary. Just let his own words choke the silence. He didn't message again. At the mansion, I planted a tree. A small cherry blossom, right in the center of the courtyard. It wouldn't bloom for months. But when it did, it would be mine. Untouched. Untrampled. I named it Receipt. A quiet reminder that everything they dismissed, I endured. Everything they laughed at, I carried. Everything they thought made me weak became the soil under my strength. You see, they used to say, Vanessa's too emotional. She's too sensitive. She can't let things go. They were right. I didn't let it go. I grew it. Into walls. Into wealth. Into a life that no longer needed their approval. Because I finally realized something. You don't owe family your peace when they only show up to spend it. March rolled in with wild winds and soft sun. The kind of weather that made the glass panels of my mansion gleam like armor. It was peaceful, private, and most of all mine. And yet, the world still found ways to try to claw in. The local business magazine reached out for a feature on women of architecture and real estate. Apparently, word had spread that I'd closed a historic deal on the Thornton estate, and I was now the youngest Black woman in Seattle to purchase and fully renovate a legacy mansion. I agreed to the interview, not to boast, but to document something my family never gave me: visibility. The photo shoot was tasteful, no flashy designer labels, no over-the-top cars. Just me, barefoot in the garden with the cherry blossom tree, in soft linen and quiet strength. When the feature went live, I sent the link to my old professor, my first boss, even the librarian from the public center I'd used in college. But not my family. And that was deliberate. 2 days later, I hosted my first formal dinner. A real one. The kind with gold-rimmed place cards and an outdoor candlelit table that stretched across the terrace. There were 20 guests, each one carefully chosen. A single mother I met at the women's shelter. A retired teacher who once told me I'd outgrow my silence. A girl I mentored who'd just landed her first apartment. It was a table built on earned seats, not inherited roles. As guests arrived, I handed out golden envelopes. No names, just a warm embossed phrase. You are not the joke. You are the reason. Inside each, a $1,000 donation in their name to the local housing foundation. The woman who used to clean my first apartment's hallway cried when she opened hers. Vanessa, why? Because I remember who handed me a towel when my heater broke and I was shivering on tile floors. You helped me feel human. This is just acknowledgement. Meanwhile, my family was on Facebook Live, celebrating my cousin Jenna's engagement. The same cousin who once told me, "You're cute, Ness. But no guy wants a girl who works that much." Mom was in the video, holding a wine glass, laughing. She looked good, unbothered. But someone must have sent her the article, because at 2:47 a.m., I got a message from a new number. I saw the piece. That house should be filled with family, not strangers. Strangers? No, Mom. These were people who saw me, who never called me dramatic for crying, who didn't roll their eyes when I pulled out my laptop on holidays, who never called me the joke. I didn't reply, but I did screenshot it. And then, I printed it, framed it, hung it near the back exit, right next to the security panel they'd never touch. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the truth. I didn't need revenge. I didn't crave an apology. I just wanted space. Clean, earned, unshared space. My cherry blossom tree had its first bud. Tiny,
Pink. New.
and as I stood beside it, wine in hand, I thought. They laughed when I paid for the dinner. They mocked me while wearing the clothes I bought. They toasted with the champagne I delivered. And now, they could toast themselves, because they were no longer on the guest list. And this time, no amount of guilt would forge a golden invite. The first time someone tried to sneak in, it wasn't literal. It was my brother. He DM'd me through a burner account. No name, no photo, just a message.
Hey.
I know we messed up, but Mom's not doing well. Maybe you could reach out. No apology. No ownership. Just guilt wearing a sick face. I didn't even open it right away. I was too busy finalizing the funding paperwork for a project none of them knew about. A transitional living space. For women like I once was, who paid for everyone and still went to bed alone, depleted. It would be fully staffed, include workshops, mental health access, legal resources, career aid. And best of all, it would be named after someone.
Me.
No family crest. No lineage. Just Vanessa Lynn Foundation. I called the lead architect to confirm the final renderings. This is the legacy, I told her. Not the house. Not the marble. This. She agreed. And so did the dozen women waiting to walk through doors that never slammed in their faces. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten. From my mother. My hands actually trembled as I opened it. Vanessa, I didn't mean to hurt you. We were just having fun. You always seemed okay. Strong. We never imagined you were keeping score. I don't know how to undo it, but I do miss you. Your home looks beautiful. We saw the article. I'm sorry if we ever made you feel less. Come visit.
Just you.
No speeches. No drama. Just us. Us. Like I was part of them again? Like I'd always been welcomed, not tolerated? I stared at the note for a long time. Then I folded it, tucked it into an envelope, wrote nothing,
Sealed it.
and slid it inside a larger manila package. Inside the package? A full-color printed brochure for the new foundation. Its vision, its mission, its donors. And on the back, my quote, "Family is not who laughs at your pain over dinner. Family is who builds warmth with you from scratch, brick by quiet brick." I mailed it. No return address. A week later, the doorbell rang. Not at the mansion. At the transitional center, still under construction. I watched on the security monitor. It was her. My mother. Wearing sunglasses. Holding a tin of cookies like it was still 1999, and I'd just won the spelling bee. She asked the foreman if Vanessa was in.
He said, "Sorry."
Only staff and residents past this point. She stood there for a minute, then walked away. That night, I wrote in my journal. They never imagined I'd walk away. But they never imagined I'd build something that didn't include them, either. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Because when you're always the punchline, and they think you'll always laugh along, They stop checking if it's cutting you. And when you stop laughing, they panic. But I wasn't bitter. I was brutally peaceful. The center opened with a quiet ceremony. No ribbon cutting. No press. Just soft music. Candles. A welcome dinner. One of the girls asked if I had family coming. I smiled. They saw me, just not clearly enough. She nodded like she understood. Because she did. We all did. That night, as I locked the main doors, I whispered, "Not all doors need to be shut out of hate. Some just don't deserve to open again." Especially when the people knocking helped build the lock. The last time my mother saw me cry, I was 26. She told me, after I maxed my savings covering my brother's hospital bill, "You're not obligated, Vanessa, but it's what family should do." Then laughed when I looked tired. Back then, I thought tears were weakness. Now I know they were warnings, ones I stopped ignoring. So when I saw her latest post on Facebook, tagging my name like bait, I didn't react. Some daughters change when they get money.
Cold. Distant.
Pretending to be better. The post had one photo. From 10 years ago. Me, squinting in a wrinkled graduation gown. Holding flowers I bought myself. I didn't respond online. I just adjusted the thermostats in my mansion to off. A silent metaphor. Because if I was cold, it's because they left the windows open during every storm. That week, I hosted a winter retreat for women in the transitional program. Cozy robes, custom journals, group therapy by firelight. One night, a girl asked, timidly, "Do you ever miss them?" I paused. Sipped my tea. Searched for honesty, not cruelty. I missed the idea of what they were supposed to be, but not the people they chose to become. She nodded. She was 19. Her own mother sold her things for pills. I didn't hug her. I didn't offer platitudes. I just handed her a key to her own room, with her name carved above it. No one had ever given her that. 2 days later, a private number rang. I answered out of instinct. My mother's voice. "You froze the accounts." My lips curled.
Yes.
After years of having my name tied to their emergencies, their bounce backs, their gaslight-covered overdrafts, I'd unlinked everything. The last shared utility. The savings sub-account I used to keep open for emergencies. All gone. Not in revenge. In release. "That's illegal," she snapped. "No," I said calmly. What was illegal was using my identity to lease a condo I didn't authorize 3 years ago. Dead silence. She didn't know I'd found that. Didn't know I'd fixed the credit hit. Didn't know I'd traced the IP login back to her address. She thought I'd never look. I always looked. I just didn't speak, until now. "You've changed," she said coldly. "Yes," I said. "That's what healing looks like from this side."
Click.
Later that night, I opened the back hallway closet in my mansion. Inside, untouched, was a small red coat, size 6T. The one I wore as a child when Dad left. Mom kept it. Always told me it was my little shield. I picked it up. It smelled like cedar and old chapters. I folded it, tied a note around it. "I've built my own shield now. One you don't hold." I mailed it to her. No return label. No explanation. Let her wonder. You see, they called me cold, but what they really meant was unavailable, unreachable, unwilling to fund their comfort anymore. Not bitter, not cruel, just done. Because the girl in the red coat? She begged for warmth. The woman in the silk robe? She owns the fire. They can keep laughing at old photos. But from here, there's no more warmth left in me for people who only know how to burn. And the best part? I no longer apologize for walking away from the heat when all they ever brought was smoke. The news finally broke in the city registry. The Thornton mansion, once thought to be quietly acquired by an overseas investor, was officially revealed as owned and fully restored by Vanessa Lynn. My inbox flooded with messages. Not just congratulations. Regret. Old coworkers who ignored me when I used to eat lunch alone in the break room. A former roommate who once borrowed $600 and vanished. Even my cousin Jenna, the same one who once called me forgettable at a family barbecue, left a voicemail. Girl, you did it. If you're having a party, count me in. I always believed in you. I didn't reply. What they didn't know was I had rewritten my will. Not because I was dying, because I was living finally on my own terms. And I wanted it all documented. Every cent, every property, every future stake in the foundation. None of it would go to blood. Not a penny. Instead, I sat with my lawyer and signed it all over. To the women rebuilding their lives through my foundation. To the young girls I mentor. To the shelter that once fed me when my fridge was empty and pride was louder than my hunger. When he asked me, "Are you sure you want to leave your family out entirely?" I said, without blinking, "They left me out when I was all in." This is just the formal reply. The next twist came quietly. An email. No subject. No signature. Just 2 sentences. Your sister's sick. Mom said she'll reach out once you've calmed down. Once I've calmed down. As if I were the storm. As if I hadn't been the one holding the umbrella for a decade, shielding them all while they danced in the downpour and called it love.
No.
There would be no reaching out. Because here's the secret they never wanted to admit. They weren't the story. I was. They were just background characters who underestimated the girls sweeping the floors after midnight, rehearsing her pitches, patching their messes in silence. And when I finally walked off the page, they panicked, because they couldn't rewrite what they no longer controlled. The following week, the city held a fundraising gala. The mayor gave a speech. So did the head of the housing coalition. Then I was called up. I didn't wear a glittering gown, just a fitted black suit. Clean lines. Quiet power. I walked to the podium, looked into the crowd, saw a familiar face at the back.
Mom.
Standing in the shadows. No ticket. No seat. Just watching. I didn't acknowledge her. Not out of cruelty. But because this wasn't her show anymore. My speech was simple. They once called me the joke. They laughed when I paid the bill. I used to think I had to earn their love through sacrifice. But love doesn't demand you go broke, proving you're worthy. It stands beside you when you have nothing. So today, I dedicate this next phase, this next center, this next city, to every woman who was never invited to her own story, but wrote herself in any way. The room erupted in applause. But I didn't smile. I just breathed. Because for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who clapped not because I served them, but because I survived them. And that was worth more than every unspoken sorry. 6 months later, I stood at the construction site of our second women's center. Not far from the first, just 1 block over. A little bigger. A little brighter. And this time, fully funded by private donations, a few grants, and something else. The sale of the condo they bought behind my back. Turns out it was under my name. They thought they were clever when they forged my digital signature. What they didn't know, I had been quietly working with a fraud investigator for my bank, and the moment they tried to refinance using my info, the hammer dropped. I didn't press charges. I pressed pause, froze the assets, reclaimed the condo through my legal team, and liquidated it with the calmness of a surgeon. The total proceeds? $278,000 after fees. More than enough for the new center, new furniture, and salaries for 5 full-time staff. Mom called me twice during the process. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to. Because I was done explaining why betrayal isn't a family tradition I plan to carry forward. The cherry blossom tree bloomed early this year. Soft pink petals fluttered down the courtyard like confetti meant for a celebration no one else could define. One morning, I sat under it, sipping coffee, when a staff member approached quietly. "There's a woman at the gate. Says she's your mother." I didn't look up. "Tell her there's no Vanessa here. Just the foundation." She nodded, walked away. I sat there. Let the wind carry the moment. Let it pass. Because that's what healing teaches you. You don't need to win the fight. You just need to stop bleeding for people who bring the knife. That night, I hosted a quiet dinner for the new residents. 7 women. Different stories. But all of them had one thing in common. They were told they were burdens. And now, they had beds with their names carved on plaques. Bathrooms with actual locks. cupboards filled with food that no one guilt them into earning. One of them, a soft-spoken woman named Lydia, raised her glass and said, "To the woman who turned pain into policy and silence into shelter." I laughed, almost cried. Then I raised mine. "To the ones who were never given keys, but found their own doors anyway." A month later, I received a certified letter from my mother's attorney, an invitation to a family meeting. She wanted to rebuild communication, suggested mediation, said enough time had passed. I smiled, typed a letter of my own. "Dear Mother, you once called me the joke. But jokes are meant to make people laugh. What you did made me disappear into myself for years. You're right, I've changed. I no longer serve people who bring hunger to my table and leave with leftovers for others. I won't be attending your meeting, because I'm already building one of my own. It's called a legacy. And in it, there's no room for your name. Vanessa." I sealed it, sent it, blocked the number for the final time. People say revenge is loud, that it shows up with sirens or fireworks.
But mine?
Mine showed up in lease agreements, in folded bedsheets, in doors that locked from the inside, with women finally safe behind them. Poetic justice didn't knock. It built a house next door. And the view was everything they never gave me, but I gave to myself.